Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Could you go stand at the lectern?
Are we gonna stand up there?
Music stand. Okay, give me a 10 count.
Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay, for some reason, okay.
12, 22, 32, 42, 52, 62, 72, 82, 92,
Okay.
102. C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Yes, that's good.
Is that good?
Yeah. Testing, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Letting your voices out of
Okay, then we'll have to get a final check on this placement. So. Anyway, I need to get my clothes from the car to my press. So this walking mic sticking straight up is yours. This mic is for you and Rex. The sound check later should be set so we'll have to try it should. Because the switch to turn it off because got a wider sound field than the others.
That's the hotel. Will be in the camera view, so it needs to go.
Do you want to change the basement or in the bathroom? I'll go down to the basement. Rex will be here. I'll take this up. That's walking. See, here's the camera one. I'll go peanut.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the one that's going to be, the camera one is just like, that's a hard question. Oh, it goes into trash.
So, I'm not seeing a lot of stuff on camera 3. On the kitchen sink, it's so far back.
Oh, let's see.
Now, I don't know how big camera 3 is.
This should.
Hard to say. Blender thing.
Homework down to help you, that was his part of his responsibility.
Blender thingy on the phone.
Oh, I see the, um, all right, well, see this, some parts here. Mark. Anyways, I'll let Mark. Yeah, that's a big white spot. We were gonna show cars in that general area. So unfortunately, that's just maybe yellow back there. Yep. You don't want to be backlit. That makes, gives something bright for people to look at, plus it darkens us. We're used to exposure. Keeping our faces dark. Okay, so that's better. That's a little bit better. So yeah, I think the only issue is forks and stuff.
Okay, somewhere, Mark, you're going to turn off the living room. Okay, see, that's done.
We're live now. Welcome to the Memorial service for my mother, Betty Andreas. I am Michael, Betty's eldest son. At the moment, everyone else is muted, so the service is not interrupted by loud noises in the environment, such as a car with a bad muffler passing someone's house. Later on, before the sharing portion of the service, I will be going over the process by which you will be recognized and unmuted in order to share your memory. During this first portion of the service, please have your Zoom setting in speaker view. If you see multiple people in a tiled view, look for a view mode control in the upper right corner of your screen and change it from gallery view to speaker view. With me here in my parents' house are my sister, Christine, her husband, Rex, my brothers, Mark and Stephen. My sister, Becky, is joining us from North Carolina. We will now begin the service with Lenny Cascio, a pastor in the Church of God at which Betty attended.
Welcome everyone again, and thank you for attending this service. Betty Jane Nickel Andreas passed away peacefully on April 28, 2021, surrounded by her children. Betty was born on February 9, 1933, to Rudolph and Lillian Nickel in Hillsborough, Kansas. She had an older sister, Mary, and was later joined by younger sisters, Elsie and Sharon, and younger brother, Henry. She grew up on a farm in the Bruthal Mennonite community near Hillsborough, Kansas, and helped her father on the farm using horse-drawn implements before the farm was mechanized. Betty married Edward Andreas on October 17, 1952, in the Bruthal Mennonite Church. She accompanied her husband while he completed the 1W alternative service program for conscientious objectors at hospitals in Pennsylvania and Kansas from 1952 to 1954. After that, they lived on a farm near Beatrice, Nebraska for 9 years, then moved to Kansas City, Kansas for 2 years, and then to their final home in Overland Park, Kansas, where Betty lived for 55 years. She became a member of the Church of God in 1965. Betty was an industrious homemaker, sewing many of the family's clothes and raising 2 large gardens to help feed the family. She also enjoyed growing many vibrant flowers, paint by number, sewing, quilting, crafts, and embroidering pictures to decorate the home. She also enjoyed providing decorations for church services, such as planned arrangements and meaningful displays with themes such as grain harvests and preparing bread. After her husband retired, they took many enjoyable car trips across the United States and Canada, visiting their children and grandchildren along the way. During their trip, she added to her collection of antiques, decorating the house and property, which harkened to her childhood growing up on a farm, working with animals and raising crops. She had a lifelong fondness for horses, and several of her antiques and decorations share a theme of farming with horses. Together, Betty and Aunt Edward had 5 children. Betty is survived by son Michael of Olathe, Kansas, daughter Christine, Rex Jamerson of Merriam, Kansas, daughter Rebecca, former spouse John Wise of East Bend, North Carolina, son Mark of Overland Park, Kansas, and son Stephen of Carrollton, Texas. Betty had 4 grandsons and 3 great-grandchildren. She was preceded in death by her parents and her husband. Now, I first met Betty at church. She was one of the founding members of our congregation over in Independence, Missouri. And something I can tell you about Betty: she was a woman of deep faith, a lifelong faith, and a commitment to the truly important values of life. She was committed to her faith, her family, and her friends. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 tells us that a good name is better than precious ointment. And Betty had a good name. It also tells us that the day of death is better than the day of one's birth, because it's better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to heart. I've always been intrigued by that passage, because it says that those of us who remain can remember a person who recently passed. We can talk about the memories that they shared. And it also forces us to focus on the important things in life. The psalmist says that precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Now, there's an incident in the life of Jesus that gives me great comfort. I hope it gives comfort to you as well, because it gives us insight in the heart of our Savior and how precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. This passage has that famous saying from Jesus that I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. What was the story behind this famous statement? Jesus and his disciples in this story learn that Lazarus is sick. And the text tells us that Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And it says that when he heard that he was sick, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed 2 more days where he was. And during this period of time, Lazarus dies. Now, don't we feel that way sometimes, that God is keeping his distance from us? This is an odd statement. It says he loved these people, and yet he stayed where he was. And sometimes we feel that God is distant from us in times of need. He often doesn't show up when we want him to. But you see, God's ways are beyond our ways. Jesus waited until Lazarus died, and then he leaves for Bethany. And he tells the disciples that Lazarus is dead, and then he says, I am glad for your sakes that I was not there. This was a strange statement to make. I'm glad for your sakes that I wasn't there when he died. What did he mean by that? Well, we also have to finish the quote, that you may believe. You see, Jesus knows the end from the beginning, and oftentimes we can be blinded the end from the beginning when we're going through difficult times, when we see the difficult things that people go through. Jesus knows the end from the beginning. From the very beginning, he knew what the end game would be, even as that we know now what the end game was then. And those of us who believe know what the end game will be. It was always God's intent to give us life. But we live in a fallen world that desperately needs rescue. We all need rescue, and it's times like this that we contemplate the truly important questions in life. And that's why Solomon said, the place of mourning is better than the place of feasting. Because now we ask the important questions in life. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Is this all there is? Is this all just some great cosmic joke that we have an eternity in our hearts while we live in these mortal bodies without the hope of attaining eternity? Is that what it's all about? Well, Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. He tells his disciples that he is glad that they weren't there when Lazarus died, because what was about to happen would confirm their faith and their belief. Mary and Martha, when they learn that Jesus is coming, run up to Jesus and both make the same statement to him. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Oh, they had faith. Yet they were wondering why he didn't show up in time of their greatest need. And Jesus tells them, your brother will rise again. And she says, I know he will at the resurrection of the last day. And we all have that hope. We have that hope for Betty and Ed and for ourselves. And when Mary and Martha said this, Jesus followed that with his famous saying, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? He asked Martha. That's the same question for us. Do you believe this? Do we believe this? And it says that Jesus groaned in his spirit, and he was troubled at the death of his friend. It says he wept. And the interesting thing here is he knew he was going to raise Lazarus from that grave, and yet he still mourned. And that tells me that it's right for us to mourn for those whom we lost. This is what Jesus did. And there's an interesting thing here is the Greek for that word groan is a very powerful word because it means to snort with anger. Why was he snorting with anger? It was a very powerful verb. It indicates that Jesus was angry, but the text doesn't tell us what he was angry with. And it doesn't say that he was angry with the people mourning because of their lack of faith. How could they possibly know what Jesus was about to do? You see, he was angry and indignant over the real enemy and the result of what that enemy had accomplished in bringing death into the world. Scripture tells us the last enemy to be destroyed is death, and that Christ gives us victory over death. And Jesus yells, "Lazarus, come forth." And Lazarus came out of that tomb. And one day, Jesus is going to cry out Betty's name. He's going to call out Ed's name. He's going to call out your name and my name. And we will all be resurrected to a new life. And we will live in Christ and never see death again. So indeed, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. He hears our mourning. He sees our tears over our loss. He stores our tears in a bottle as a memorial. And the day will come when he will set the world right and dry all our tears. And there'll be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. This creation that was so subjected to futility, not by God's will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. And there's that word again, groaning. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel and the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. And we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. And then Paul, in this letter to the Thessalonians, sums up word for all of us when he says, "Therefore comfort one another," with these words. I have several readings here from, this first one is from Michael, Betty's eldest son. It says, Mom was not able to receive much formal education because her father pulled her out of school after the 8th grade to work on the farm. But she was supportive of education for her children, all of whom attended college. She did get the most value from the education she was allowed, and she had the most beautiful handwriting. Mom experienced a wide range of technology. She learned about teamwork watching the backside of a team of horses pulling a farm implement. She also knew how to properly put a harness on a horse and could recognize when harnesses were improperly dressed at horse shows. But as time passed, horse farming became obsolete. Computers became more powerful, yet Mom did not embrace that technology. I was able to bring her along by bringing over a laptop on visits to show photos and play a quiz game. Over time, I was able to get her to click a mouse and become a bit more comfortable with it. Eventually, I gave Mom her own laptop and set her up with email and Facebook. Mom enjoyed looking at pictures from friends and relatives, yet she never learned to type. But then again, she didn't really need to since she had such beautiful handwriting and kept up a correspondence with another lady in church. On the other hand, I have to type since my handwriting is so bad. Mom was a project manager and needed to be one in order to manage 5 children with limited resources. With a limited budget, hotel stays were not an option when we traveled, so we camped, but everyone was properly dressed and fed and required a great deal of organization. For a time, she ran a daycare to supplement the family income. Mom raised a large garden to help feed her family, but as we children grew up and went out on our own, the area devoted to beans and tomatoes reduced, and Mom was able to grow more flowers. Mom also had artistic interest, painting a few paint-by-number pictures and embroidering others. Although she never learned to play a musical instrument, we did get a piano on which my siblings who had the interest learned to play. I was not interested, and she did not force me. Mom was always industrious up to her final few months when her illness sapped her strength. Not being able to be very active distressed her, and she did not want to be a cluck. I assured her that she was entitled to take a break after all these years of hard work. Unfortunately, we didn't realize that she had a disease that would take her from us sooner and more quickly than we expected. The positive side is that she didn't suffer long, and the disease itself, nor from the restrictions of her activity. When another lady whom Mom admired would pass away, she would say that she would like to have had something read in tribute. I offer the same in tribute to Mom, as she deserves it. She seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. She considers a field and buys it. From her profits she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor, yet she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies sashes for the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. She watches over the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. And this is from Christine Andreas Jamerson. Mom was an energetic person who had multiple talents. She was very organized and kept our 7-ring circus of a household on schedule. I guess you could say she was the ringmaster. I can't think of a time when any of us kids were ever late for school. Mom grew up on a farm in central Kansas. She was the second daughter in the family of 5 siblings. She was her dad's right-hand assistant with the farm and livestock chores. Since she had chores that kept her busy every morning until just before school started, she raced her horse to school because she didn't have time to walk. Her siblings walked to school as they didn't have to do the farm chores. As soon as school was over, she had to rush back to continue with the chores. She advanced to the 8th grade and then stayed home full-time to help on the farm. Her siblings all graduated from high school. Mom always wanted to graduate from high school, and both she and Dad always encouraged us children in our education. Mom actually studied for her GED in the 80s, and I have no doubt she would have passed it had she taken the exam. While education was very important in a farming community, the land was also very important. Mom learned excellent farming and livestock management from her father and carried those skills to gardening. She really enjoyed working outside, doing yard work, and working in the vegetable and flower gardens. When Mom and Dad would prepare and stake out the garden every spring, the rows were all very straight and were planted far enough apart so she could use the tiller in between the rows, that beat using the hoe. She canned countless quarts of green beans and tomatoes from the garden, and also froze lots of green beans. Picking and stemming the mountains of green beans was the assignment of us kids every summer. I would have much rather been reading a book than picking and stemming beans. Mom and Dad would also go to orchards and obtain apples for applesauce and peaches to can. The shelves in the basement would be full, and there would be enough canned goods to eat until the next summer. I also remember other people calling on Mom to help when they had an emergency, and she would drop what she was doing and go clean up someone's house and then come back home to continue her own projects. Mom could assess the situation quickly and figure out what to do. One of my early memories was Mom embroidering a picture of a horse. She always enjoyed horses. Her embroidery and needlework was always beautiful. She learned to sew at a young age, and when my sister Becky and I were in school, the sewing machine was always in use. Mom made most of our clothes, and when leisure suits were in style, she made one for Dad and my brothers. She liked those because they were washable. In addition to sewing clothes, Mom made quilts or a quilted wall hanging for each of us children and made my needlework pictures. Mom enjoyed collecting items to create seasonal displays for church and other special occasions. Many times her displays would include some of the vibrant houseplants she nurtured. Mom was not a dainty cream puff. She worked through pain. I remember in the mid-'80s she had gone to a wallpaper store after we had several-inch snowfall. In the parking lot at the wallpaper store, she fell on some ice and broke her ankle. What did she do? She crawled into her car and drove home. And then she crawled up the stairs to get to the house and made sure dinner was in the oven. Only then did she call Dad at work and tell him that she needed to go to the emergency room. At the emergency room, they found out the break was very bad and that she needed surgery and pins. She called the wallpaper store and told them they needed to clean up the parking lot so no one else would have a fall, and that she had broken her ankle. She didn't tell them who was in the call, but they found out who it was and offered to pay for her care. She didn't have that in mind when she called, but the settlement paid for a nice deck to be built at the house. Mom always encouraged us to take classes and to learn skills that would help us be successful in the working world, and we were always encouraged to do our best doing our chores around the house. And when we showed an interest in learning a musical instrument, she was always supportive. I took piano lessons, Mark took French horn and piano lessons, and Stephen took trombone and piano lessons. One of Mom's enjoyments was taking trips after his children were grown. She went to Alaska a couple of times with a friend, and Mom and Dad went on quite a few trips before Dad retired in the late 90s, as well as after he retired. They took many photographs of the places they saw and collected mementos along the way. They covered a lot of ground in their travels. They visited my sister and her family in North Carolina several times until Dad's health declined and was unable to travel. I don't think they went to every state in the lower 48, but they came close, and they also visited parts of Canada. I will miss Mom, but I'm glad for the memories. Christine. And then this one is from Rebecca. She says, our mom was one in a million. She meant a lot to us in many ways. We were blessed that she worked at home instead of elsewhere. She was never paid for any of her labors, but she saved an untold amount, and the things she taught us were priceless. Mom taught us right from wrong, how to share, cooperate, and forgive. She kept us healthy, safe, clothed, and fed. She showed us how to work willingly, finish what we started, and take pride in a job well done. She always did everything on time and kept us on schedule. She was a domestic CEO, capable, efficient, organized. The house was always neat, clean, and inviting, and the yard and gardens were always beautiful, colorful, and bountiful. Although cooking wasn't Mom's favorite task, every meal was delicious and nutritious. Most of our vegetables came from her organic garden. Our bread, cereal, and desserts came from the flour she ground herself. We also had unprocessed milk and honey and homemade ice cream. She canned and froze many quarts of homegrown vegetables every year and bought bushels of apples for the best applesauce ever. We all remember many favorite meals that Mom often prepared. She also packed our lunches for school every day for many years, plus Dad's for work. She also gave us tasty and healthy snacks after school, and we all remember milk and cookie time on hot summer afternoons. Fresh cold milk and homemade cookies or brownies. She also made many pleasant, memorable cookouts and picnics. She was an excellent seamstress and made most of our clothes, including tailored suits for the men. She also bought many clothes for us at garage sales, thrift stores, and outlets. Books, games, puzzles, and building sets also came from garage sales. In her spare time, she did many beautiful needlework projects, from wall hangings to quilts and other decor. She also had many paint-by-number pictures to frame. Mom made sure she did our homework, limited our TV time, but gave us plenty of time to play. She also assigned us chores to teach us a work ethic and gave us an allowance to teach us how to manage money. We also enjoyed it when she read to us every bedtime for many years. She also made sure meals were family time and a TV didn't take the place of conversation. She always knew what to do when we were sick or hurt, sad or upset. She calmly nipped bad behavior in the bud. She lived by and taught us the golden rule, honesty and integrity. She also had us memorize important Bible verses to exercise our minds and build character. When we had summer jobs or worked after school or weekends, she always made sure we ate well before and after, packed us nice lunches, and took us to and from work. While I was at college and later married, her weekly letters were a lifeline for many years. When long-distance calls became affordable, we kept in touch even more, and visits were only a phone call away. When I was a child, Mom was my caregiver and teacher. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be independent and different. But since about age 20, I viewed her more and more often as a role model. She was also my mentor, confidant, and friend. We had similar views on many topics, similar taste, and I often emulated her style. It meant a lot to me when she was proud of me, happy for me, and because her opinion was very important to me. Our visits back and forth or shared family trips were always the highlight of the year for me. She was always a welcoming place to relax and visit. We all miss our mom more than we can say, but I'm thankful for many pleasant memories and knowing that her passing was peaceful and she was not alone, afraid, or in pain. I'm glad also that she lived a good long life, overcame many hardships, and accomplished many good things. We are truly blessed to have had 1 in a million mom. Steve?
Hello, I'm Stephen. I am the youngest of the 5. I've enjoyed hearing my siblings' memories, so you may see some of those common themes continue. Before I go there, we hadn't formally announced how Mom died, but it's not a secret or anything. She died of complications from AML. That's acute myeloid leukemia. It's a cancer where the bone marrow produces way too many white blood cells. The white blood cells start to make up a higher percentage of the blood volume, which starts to crowd out other parts of the blood, like platelets and hemoglobin, which carries the oxygen. Acute myeloid leukemia was the surprise probable diagnosis for everyone in the family on the morning after she was admitted, and it was confirmed several days later. Her more immediate cause of death was a stroke. The doctors said that day that it was not uncommon with leukemia because all of the white blood cells take up so much volume of the blood that it eventually blocks proper blood flow to the brain. The good news about leukemia is that although this kind of cancer makes you weak, it does not cause pain. So in Mom's final days, she was awake and alert and communicative and not in pain. So we are all thankful for that. I wanted to share how things occurred from my perspective in the time leading up to Mom's death. It's not fun to lose a parent, of course, but it was fortunate that most of us siblings could be here with her. 3 of the siblings live here in the area. I live in Dallas, though, Dallas, Texas. But the timing worked out well in my case because it happened while I was here for a planned visit. Most of the time when a family member dies unexpectedly, family who live far away have to travel several hours with a heavy heart and maybe with misplaced guilt for not being there at the time. For me, my trip to Kansas City was pretty normal because I drove up from Texas to spend about a week continuing to sort through more of my dad's things after he died while I was here last August. I had already been here in March helping my oldest brother Michael go through Dad's things. I normally would have come back for the next family visit around July 4th, but I wasn't looking forward to the idea of spending several days in the heat of July sorting through things in Dad's 2 small wooden barns in our backyard. So in early April, I decided I'd make my next trip up to Kansas City just a few weeks later in April, so Michael and I could continue to work while it was still cool. Fortunately, I'm in a period of temporary early retirement, so I didn't have the burden of sorting through Dad's things while juggling a work schedule. So I decided I would drive up again on a Thursday 5 weeks ago. It's about an 8.5-hour trip of driving. But it was supposed to rain that Thursday, and I didn't want to load my car and drive in the rain if I could avoid it. So I called Mom to say I would delay my trip by a day and start driving up either late Thursday night or early Friday morning. My goal was to avoid Mom having to wait up for me, as she had done in the past when we'd drive up, and her normal bedtime was about 8:30 p.m. I knew from experience I'd be taking some naps along the way, so I wanted to get an early start so I could arrive before her bedtime. While I was packing for this supposed week-long trip, on my trip packing checklist, I got to Sabbath wear for church, and I thought, well, I will be doing sign language interpreting on Zoom like we've been doing with the deaf group in church for over a year. So I need to pack a dark shirt for good contrast with my light-colored hands. So that should be fine. Then I stopped and thought for a moment, well, I just might be going to a memorial service for Mom. You never know. So I better pack a white dress shirt too, just in case. And that's the white dress shirt that I have on now. Well, I finally started driving at about 5:45 that Friday morning, several hours later than I wanted to leave. And I was extra tired that day, so I think I took 3 long naps along the way. So I didn't arrive until 9:15 p.m. after Mom's bedtime. I didn't expect her to be waiting up for me, but there she was, just like every other time I arrived after her bedtime. Well, I finally that paragraph. We had a nice talk, Mom and I, in the kitchen table that evening. She mentioned that she had been short of breath and had gone to her family doctor about it. He prescribed an inhaler for her, but she didn't react well to the med, so she had stopped taking it. I asked her if she had asked her heart specialist about her shortness of breath. She was already taking blood pressure medicine and had a pacemaker. I told her that shortness of breath could be caused by something other than the lungs. It could be heart-related. She said, well, that's true, and I had the impression that she would call her heart doctor in a few days on Monday. We talked a while more. I don't remember what about, just normal stuff, a nice talk. Then it was past time for her to go to bed, so we said good night. The next morning, when I was still in bed, my brother Mark came into my room and told me that Mom wanted him to take her to the emergency room because her shortness of breath was worse. I came out, made sure that she had her cell phone with her, and saw them off. But I wasn't too worried. She and Dad had been to the emergency room about things before, and they were always handled okay. Not anything dire in the end. And anyway, Mom was going to call her heart doctor Monday morning about the shortness of breath thing. Later that day, Mark told us that they were running tests. And then later, he said they were running some more tests, and then they wanted to keep her overnight while they waited for the results. To me, it all sounded familiar. One time, Dad went to the emergency room on a Friday about something, and they ran tests, and he had to stay in the hospital overnight so they could keep an eye on him while they waited for the test results. And because it was the weekend, he had to stay longer until Monday, I think, when they found out it was something minor. If he had gone in on a Thursday, he would have been out back home on Friday, been out the next day. So, see, I was an expert on these things. It wasn't until the next morning, Sunday morning, when Michael went to our hospital room and learned that the blood test gave the doctors a preliminary diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia. Suddenly, it was serious. We didn't expect that one coming. So while Mom stayed in the hospital for observation, and so they could do more tests to confirm the preliminary diagnosis, we went there to visit her and had nice, long, calm visits there over the next several days. I think some of my siblings experienced shock about it all. For me, it was more like a surprise, but not shock. Part of that was because every time over the last couple of years when I would call Mom to talk on the phone, she would start every call by saying that she was old and she couldn't do as many things as she could before. One of the most recent times I called, she said at the beginning, "Well, I'm an old cluck." Maybe that sounds like a strange expression to some of you, but I could smile at her self-deprecating farmer humor. To me, she was comparing herself to an old hen that just sat on a roost and wasn't able to do much except make a clucking sound. Anyway, I think of her starting off all of those phone calls that way put me more in a realization that she might not be around with us too many more years. I also had seen and heard that sometimes when one spouse takes care of the other spouse physically for several years, when the cared for spouse dies, the other spouse might die within a few months. And Mom had taken care of our dad and his special diet and medications for several years. especially in the last few months of his life. Maybe it doesn't really happen that way. Maybe it's just more noticeable to us when it does happen. I'm going to skip a few things that have already been covered. As was mentioned before, after her 8th grade year of school, Mom wanted to continue her schooling, but she started working with Grandpa in the fields and on the farm full time after that. And she was very good at it. To us, though, she was still very smart. It never seemed to me growing up like she hadn't finished school, only when she brought it up. She didn't have a high school diploma, and so she probably wouldn't have been hired to work in an office, but she probably wouldn't have wanted to work in the office anyways. Anyway, there were 5 kids to take care of. She made sure her kids had what she did not. So when I was a kid, she babysat some of the neighborhood kids. When I was a teenager, she walked paper routes with us boys, putting bags of advertisements on people's doors. A lot of that income paid for my music lessons. And she wanted us also to learn the value of working, not lying around the house all summer. We also delivered phone books 1 or 2 summers. For those of you who don't know what a phone book is, it's a big, thick book like a Sears catalog with names and addresses and phone numbers in it. Yeah, if you wanted to call someone, you could just look up them in the white pages, or you could look up businesses in any category by looking in the yellow pages. It was pretty cool. But now I'm thinking, if you don't know what a phone book is, you probably don't know what a Sears catalog is either. Anyways, we delivered white pages and maybe yellow pages too, I don't remember, but they were thick and heavy, bigger than copy machine paper, and about 2.5 inches thick. We delivered phone books in some rich areas. Well, they seemed rich to me. In those days, you got your phones from the phone company. And the phone company told us how many phone books to give each house based on how many phones they knew were in the house. Can you believe some of those people were so rich they got 6 phone books? I think we had 3 phones at our house, and that's only because 1 or 2 of them were already antiques when I was a kid, probably brought when my family moved from the farm to the city when I was born. And that's only because Dad wired up all the phones himself. One of those phones was in the garage so that Mom and Dad could hear the phone ring when they are outside working in the yard, or so my dad could answer the phone when he was greasy working in the garage without going into the house. Mom didn't want dirt and grease being tracked into the house just to answer the phone. And answering machines were new technology back then. So you couldn't just let the call go to voicemail. When you heard the phone ring, you had to run and answer it out of breath. Yeah, Mom always segregated inside clean things from outside dirty things. Outside toys didn't come into the house to track in dirt or sand. That's something that stuck with me to this day. As you've heard from my siblings, Mom was a hard worker, and she worked hard in our large garden, growing food to feed the family to stretch the grocery dollars further. She grew tomatoes, lots of green beans, potatoes, onions, sometimes squash, even eggplant, but thankfully only 1 or 2 years of eggplant. I think it was earlier this year she told me that she could tell the rest of the family didn't like the eggplant the same way she did, so she stopped planting it. And we had some unwritten, unspoken rules at the dinner table. There were spoken rules too, like you didn't just leave the table when you were done, you asked to be excused. And you didn't leave the table while others were still eating. One unspoken rule, was that you had to take some of everything that Mom cooked on the table. You didn't have to take seconds, but you did have to take firsts. And another unspoken rule was that you never complained about food. I remember every time dinner was the dreaded eggplant steaks. The thought of it makes me shudder to this day. I scrutinized all around that skillet, looking for the very smallest steak there was in that skillet. And when there was eggplant, I tried to be the first one to pick the eggplant skillet to serve myself. Not so I could be greedy and have the biggest piece, but so I could have the smallest piece. I ate lots of second helpings at the table, but I never ate second helpings of eggplant. One thing we did every year was harvest green beans. You heard my sisters speak a little about that. Mom planted row after row after row of beans. I liked eating green beans, but I knew every additional row of green beans meant one more row of picking beans. And then one year, Mom and Dad tilled up more of the backyard and make a second garden with even more green beans. The whole family would be out there picking beans together, sometimes even Dad if he didn't have to work on something else that evening after work. We'd pick beans in the morning before it got hot, and we'd pick beans in the evening when it got cooler. It was still hot though, with uncomfortable, scratchy leaves of bean plants rubbing on your arms and legs as you looked under and around the plants looking for beans to break off. Sometimes she would make it more fun for us by having a competition to see which of us kids could pick more rows of beans. And then, after Mom finished a few rows of her own, she would come back behind us in the row we were still picking and say, "You're missing a lot of beans back here." All those buckets of green beans we picked had their next stop on a blanket under our big shade tree in the backyard to be stemmed. A big pile of beans, and we would snap the end of the stem end off the bean and toss the stemmed bean into a container. Stemming beans was fun enough when my brothers and sisters were there and we could talk and tell stories. But for some reason, one time I was there under the tree on the blanket, stemming beans all by myself, looking at this big mound of beans I had to stem. Such drudgery. And Mom was out there in the garden picking more. And then she would walk up with a couple of more yellow buckets full of beans and pour them on that mound, making it even higher. Meanwhile, I'm slowly picking up beans, one at a time, breaking the end off, dropping the end, dropping the bean into a bucket, picking up the next bean. Then Mom walked past me between the garden and the house, crouched down on the blanket and said, "Here, Stephen, you can do these much faster. See how I do it." She grabbed about 10 beans in her left hand and snapping off the stems with her right hand. Snap, 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 snap. Drops it in the basket, grabs another handful. Snap, snap, snap. There, do it like that. I'm glad she wasn't a softie and let me get out of it, but she showed me how I could make the best of it, enjoy it more by working quickly rather than dragging my feet. I was the youngest, so I wasn't able to do the next step, carrying the beans into the kitchen, washing the dirt off a sink full of beans, then cutting the beans into pieces. My older brothers and sisters got to cut the beans, but I couldn't because I was too young to use a knife. I had to stay outside stemming more beans. So I was happy and proud when I finally was able to get to start cutting beans like my siblings, and then scooping up the cut beans into 1-quart glass mason jars for Mom to can. Of course, Mom always had the hardest part, the least comfortable, lowering wire racks of glass canning jars into kettles of boiling water to vacuum pack them when it was 95 degrees outside and 70% humidity. In the kitchen with no air conditioning, just open windows, making the kitchen more hot and more humid with several kettles of boiling water on top of the stove. She never complained about the work. She did complain about the heat and humidity, but she didn't complain about the work of providing for her family for the coming months that kept working in that hot and humid kitchen. She set a good example for us in that way. Shifting back to when Mom was in the hospital a few weeks ago. When I first visited her in the hospital, it was approaching mealtime, and the nurse was asking her what she wanted to eat for the next meal. but the tray of food from the previous meal was still there on the table, basically untouched. That was totally uncharacteristic for Mom. That was another unwritten rule. Well, I forget if it was spoken or unspoken rule. Don't waste food. If you order food or you take food, you need to eat the food. But Mom had not been hungry enough to eat it. Well, the nurse took Mom's choices for the next meal, and Mom was easily making choices between this item and that item. She didn't say she wasn't hungry or wasn't interested. And when the next meal arrived, she didn't eat from that tray either. Eventually, a dietitian came and talked to Mom about being able to eat. She suggested having a protein drink like Ensure brought with breakfast the next morning so she could drink that if she didn't eat the normal breakfast food. So it was like her eyes were hungry, but her tummy was not hungry. I knew from our experience with Dad last year that this was not to be taken lightly. It was not sustainable. On the last afternoon before she died, when Mark and I got there early in the afternoon, I saw that there was a partially drunk bottle of Ensure on her bed table. I asked her if that was her first bottle of the day. No, it was her second bottle, so I felt a little better. So we had another good visit with Mom that afternoon, but I also noticed she didn't eat or drink anything the whole time we were there. So when I saw the staff preparing to bring in her dinner, I right away thought that if we were there, we would distract her from eating, and I knew she needed to eat. So I quietly said to Mark that we better go, hoping that she could eat dinner. Then she said, "You boys better go home and eat something." So she wanted to make sure that we weren't hungry when she was the one who wasn't eating enough. As I leaned down to hug her goodbye for the day, she started to say, "Well, in case I don't see you again." I gently cut her off, saying, "Oh, Mom, we'll see you tomorrow." Well, as it turned out, we were both right. The next morning, as I was about to take a shower, Michael called to say that Mom had had a stroke. So maybe I better skip the shower this time. When we got to the hospital, she was alive but not responsive, and she did not open her eyes that final day. So I was right. We did see her the next day, but she was right too. She didn't see us again. For the next part of the service today, we would like to play Mom's favorite hymn when she was a girl growing up in the Mennonite church. When I was playing piano as a teenager, with my music lessons paid for by Mom walking paper routes, she eventually brought me an old hymnal and asked me to learn how to play that song for her. So I would play it pretty often on the basement piano when I knew she was there to hear it. A piano, by the way, that Mom and Dad had bought for a good price, and then she stripped and refinished all of the wood herself in the garage, as a matter of fact. I'm just a little bit out of practice on the piano now, so I'm not going to play it for you myself. But we found a recording of it online with the choir singing it. The recording is from an Anabaptist music camp with a room full of people sitting in church pews, not an actual performance, which is why you will hear a happy baby sometimes singing along with the music. The hymn is called "O Power of Love," and we will play that for you now. No need for you to sing along with the recording. While the recording plays, the page from Mom's hymn book that I learned it from as a boy will be shown on your screens, so you can follow along with the lyrics. If you have currently switched your Zoom view to gallery view, you can switch back to speaker view now to see the lyrics better. If you're on a PC, click View in the upper right hand corner, then click Speaker View.
Thee in
Okay, we will now have Lenny Cascio again. He will read a few more letters from other people who knew Betty.
Mentioned earlier that the important things in Betty's life were her faith, her family, and her friends. We've heard about her faith. We've heard from her children. I have a couple of other letters here I want to read. The first one is from Faith Amel and family. And Faith writes, our prayers and thoughts are with you and your family. We love you all so much. We've known and been acquainted with your precious Andreas family for many years. Your mother and I wrote each other every week for 10 years. She always wrote on a Sunday, and I've appreciated her friendship so much. She was so interested in her garden and her flowers. We always had a big garden, grew some watermelon and cantaloupe, and she was looking forward to planting marigolds, also planting some garden in her several garden boxes. Soon we'll meet each other at Christ's coming. With much love, Faith Amel and family. The second one is from Esther Andreas with Paul, Bonnie, and Nancy. Dear Michael, Christine, Becky, Mark, Stephen, and families, thinking of you through this time. When Paul and I were first married, your mother was one of my best friends. I will miss our phone conversations. This card pretty much sums up everything I would say about Betty. Blessed are the people who walk in the light of your countenance, from the 89th Psalm. And Esther writes, I'm praying God will comfort and care for you while you celebrate the legacy that lives on. With sympathy, love, blessings to all, from Aunt Esther and Paul, Bonnie, and Nancy. Michael.
Okay, we will now begin the memory sharing session for those of you out there on Zoom. I would like to start off with Patricia. Patricia is deaf, so we will have to do a few extra things to get her set up in order to do this. If Patricia and Lily would please raise your hands so I can find you here in the list and enable you. Let's see. Okay, so if you would now both unmute. And I will now pin Patricia, and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Patricia, Steve's longtime friend. He is my longtime interpreter in the church. I am a family member for 15 years. I first met Betty in 2003. Last time I saw her was in 2017. That was when she found out I was romantically involved with my John, sitting next to me here. Since that, she's followed me on Facebook, and over 3 years, when I got married to John, she presented me with a wedding card and cash, a gift. She was like a mom for me. I would rather visit her than my own mom. She even wrote me letters too. My favorite memory of her was my sitting at table for breakfast and that she made eggs and cheese with ranch dressing, homemade toast with honey and lemon ginger tea and orange juice. It happened every time I visited. She was a great cook and housekeeper. I'm wearing the bracelet she gave me in honor of her family today. I am so sorry for the loss of your parents. Thank you.
Okay. Give me a moment here while. Could you unpin Patricia for me, Stephen?
Sure. If I can find her. Well, here she is.
Okay.
Remove spotlight. Okay, spotlight's removed.
Okay. We will now open this up to allow anyone else to share a memory that you would like to. First, let me explain a little bit about how Zoom works. There's a raise hand feature which tells me, the host, that you would like to speak, and then I will be unmuting you to speak. There are a couple of different versions of Zoom. If you downloaded Zoom some time ago, what you'll do is you'll hover your mouse over the screen, and this bar should appear at the bottom of the screen, and there's a participants icon. If you press that, then a tab will open to the right, and at the lower left portion of that new panel is a raise hands feature, and you will click that. Okay, if you have a newer version of Zoom, if you just downloaded it today for this service, then you will click the reactions tab down there at the same toolbar, and when that happens, the little window will pop up, and there's a raise hands button.
Yeah, somebody has a raised hand now.
And when you press it, then there will be a raised hand symbol. Okay? So when I recognize someone, I will ask you to unmute through Zoom, and you'll have a little pop-up window there asking you to unmute. So you just click the unmute, and then I will tell you to go ahead and speak. So let me see if I have someone. I have a code 610331. I'm going to ask you to unmute, and since we don't know who 610331 is, we'll ask you to identify yourself.
Hello, this is Sharon.
Hi,
I'm
Sharon.
privileged to be part of this occasion. Betty, my sister, is my true life hero. Am I unmuted?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not.
Oh, we heard her.
We heard it. Okay.
Okay, I hear you. Okay. The thing that makes this loss bearable is the fact that she is now enjoying eternal life. A few years back, when I was struggling with a life problem, she gave me a lovely Bible verse, and I hold it dear to my heart. It says, "Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on such things." Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else who would like to speak? Not seeing any raised hands. Okay, in that case, I have a memory that was pre-recorded by Dave Schnelly. Dave Schnelly was a family friend of Mom and Dad. After they had a business relation in their trust, I'll be playing that here.
This is Dave Schnelly. Farmed the ground that Betty and Eddie were part of with the family, and Betty was a totally different relationship than Eddie. They never ever quarreled. When we had our differences, one would be quiet and the other one, and that was some of the wonderful things that I learned from them. I never seen either one of them quarrel. When we would do things with the farm and like tearing the buildings down, when Eddie took all that junk down to Kansas City, why Betty says, "We don't need all this," and Eddie wanted to take it down there, and then she used it for decorations. It was so entertaining for me. And not many people, when we did these things, why, there was a bush, a spirea bush with some trumpeter vine in it, and Betty said that was such a shame that had to be bulldozed, and so we figured out a way that I dug part of that out, and that's sitting in my front yard. And it's so neat to walk out of the house and see something and remember somebody. And the other thing, that the last time that they were up here, we always talked about flowers with Betty. She gave me 2 flowers and got them on my kitchen table. And there's a peony plant that I got out in front. It's kind of a puny one. But I told her, I says, you know, it's neat how peonies bloom in Memorial Day. And I said, this never does. And I just wanted to know what's going to this year. The kindness that she showed me and the patience was really wonderful. We visited about raising kids and families, and now there was no book to tell us what to do. We did the best we could. How the birth order was, and how when we were young we did it differently than when we were older. And I think that was the conversation that she and I always had was, it isn't perfect, but it's the best we can do. She would apologize for her education, but yet there was nothing that we couldn't visit about that she didn't have a good solution for. And Eddie too. And I think part of the uniqueness of our relationship was they were about my parents' age, and I could ask them questions I wouldn't ask my own parents. And they could answer in such a kind and gentle yet firm way that it was safe for everybody. I wish that somehow in today's age we could ever accomplish that in our new world of whatever this is with COVID and everything else. But they were two great people in my life. The flowers, though, I mean, that was flowers and calves and farming and always safe topics that a lot of people wouldn't visit about. But how to grow plants and how to grow wheat and how to grow corn, how to cultivate, how to harness horses, the joys that a farmer can only relate with another farmer. And she always said she'd have made a good boy. But she tried hard, and she was sure good to me for, as keeping, when I was up in North Dakota, where she'd always give words of encouragement. And when I think of now that we're the older generation, what we can do to, I don't think it's educate, because she didn't educate me, but it was kind of a second witness, a confirming that we need to do to people that need the strength. So that's what I've taken away from Eddie and Betty Andreas. Great people. That we wouldn't talk much about the Bible, little things, but it was always, we didn't want to face the heartaches here, that we all hoped we was gone before the bad stuff happened, and there was only one that was going to fix this, and it wasn't man. So I miss their calls. That's about all I got to say, but two great people. I hope I can carry water on their table. Thanks a lot to the Andreas family. Goodbye.
Yes. I'd like to read what some of the comments were in the chat.
Okay,
So-
go ahead, Stephen.
Okay. Yep, I'm live. I'm glad everyone was able to join today. I'm going to read a comment in chat, if you weren't able to see it, from our second cousin and also third cousin. Not sure how that works. But this is from Linda Hirschler Ross to everyone. She says, I have laryngitis, but I'm happy to have spoken with her shortly after Uncle Eddie passed last fall. We spoke for quite some time, and Betty shared thoughts about all we kids growing up, keeping in contact, or not so much if we should have, the long-time friendship that she had with my mother, and some of life's similarities that they shared. I was glad to have gotten to know Becky and Stephen better as young adults while I lived in Pasadena so many years ago. Aunt Betty was a stalwart Christian character and was unflappable in her way of taking on life. We spoke about education, but she wondered how she somehow was able to convey to her kids how important education was in her lack of scholarliness. One thing is definite, she was certainly not uneducated. She was much loved and will be missed. And I see another comment from our first cousin, Constance Pelly. One of the things that you've all touched on was that Aunt Betty never completed high school. While she never did, you could never tell it. You could tell that she had educated herself. She was truly an amazing woman. She was someone that I always admired and respected. Thank you. If anyone else would like to speak please feel free to raise your hand, or if that part hasn't clicked, we have few enough people that we can see on our screen. You can try waving your hand so we can recognize you that way.
I think we have a few people who are not visible, so
Camera view is turned off.
let's see.
Let me say, if any of you who have joined us on the telephone and not using your computer, you can still raise your virtual hand by pressing *9, and that will tell us that you would like to say something. So feel free, if you're not on video or on the computer, you can press *9 to let us know you would like to say something as well. Please feel welcome.
We'll give it a minute here to see if anyone will raise their hand. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anyone. In that case, I believe I'll bring this service to a close. I will be showing a slideshow of pictures. If you tuned in late, you may want to watch it. If you'd like to chat after the first pass-through, Stephen will be on, and maybe some others, and they would be happy to chat with you. So I'm going to start the pre-roll now, the slideshow now.
I've muted.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, this is Christine. I'm going to narrate some of these photos. This is mom and dad and mom. No, this is mom's side of the family. That's children. Oh, it's not on.
No, I see Christine speaking.
Okay, this is Christine again. I'm narrating. That's mom and dad and when I was graduating from high school. And this is mom and dad. She had made dad's leisure suit here. This was in the 70s, probably 74, 75. Here it's Mark and Stephen. And then this picture is mom and dad and everybody except Michael. And these were clothes that mom had made. Here's an old-timey photo we had taken down at the Lake of the Ozarks, I believe.
Wisconsin Dells.
No, Wisconsin Dells. Okay. Here's another photo, family photo. Michael was already on his own. And then here's a picture where mom and dad were refinishing a door in the house that we're currently living in. They tackled many projects in the house. And here's mom and dad with, apparently I'm out of the house now. And here's Mark at Mark's graduation with mom and dad. And here's mom's family, siblings and grandchildren. The grandparents are sitting in the second row. Here is mom's parents at their 50th wedding anniversary.
That might stop working for some.
And this is Michael's graduation from college. Okay, here's a picture of mom and, well, I guess mom and dad aren't in this one. This is a family photograph at my great aunt's when it was Thanksgiving Day. Here's a family photo with Becky and her husband John and their first child. Here is mom quilting, and I believe Aunt Elsie took this photograph. And this is a family photo when, what was that?
That was at the airport.
That was at the airport when John and Becky came in town. Here's a family photo with two of Becky's children. And then this is the immediate family, just the siblings and mom and dad. This was in the 80s, I guess. And here's mom on one of the trips that she and dad made, I think. And there's a horse. And here is Michael and grandson Ted at Ted's graduation. And another family gathering when Michael came up to visit, and there was mom with grandson Aaron, Becky's son.
That's David.
Is that David? They look alike. Here's another family photo when John and Becky came to visit with their three boys. It's been a few years. This was probably back in the, oh my,
That would be North Carolina.
15 years ago. Here's another photo, mom and Rex and dad. And this is mom and dad. They had a photograph. This is in Pasadena, California.
This would be at my graduation.
Stephen's graduation from college. And then this is a photo taken about 1990, I think. And this is a family gathering on dad's side of the family. And dad's siblings and their spouses. Here's John and Becky's children. And here's Becky with more of their three children. And another group photo. The children are all grown now. The youngest is now graduated from college. And this is mom and Aunt Marilyn, yeah. And mom is looking at a saddle that's pretty bedazzled. She liked horse tack. And here's another picture with mom and dad and the grandsons. And yet another one. You can see Adam is really hamming it up there.
This This was on one of their visits to North Carolina.
Yeah, this is on a visit to North Carolina. 'Cause Becky lives there with her children in extended areas from there. And this is in some place they visited out there. I don't remember the name, but this is in the North Carolina area. And very beautiful gardens. Another picture with lots of greenery.
I think this was still on a visit to
I think this was,
Becky in North Carolina.
yeah, this was in North Carolina. They were visiting some historical place. And this looks like it was Parents' Day. We would combine Mother's Day and Father's Day halfway in between and
At Christine's house.
at my house. And this is a picture with Michael, Mom and Dad. And this is a picture of Dad and his siblings and spouses
I think that's from 2002.
at a family reunion. This is 2002. This is my parents' backyard. This is one of the sheds that they had built. Tough shed. This was at Rex's and my house several years ago. And there's Mom with her sister, Elsie. And then another family picture when Becky had come up for a visit. This is her son, youngest, David. In the front yard.
Well, we still
That
have
tree,
a
that tree is no longer with us. And this is a garden plot that Mom's preparing to get organized with a set of concrete horses and a wagon.
Yeah, Mom had that fence set up to hide Dad's ugly iron pile in the backyard.
So here, the youngest grandson, David, is enjoying a ride on a horse. And this is a house that Rex and I used to live in, a family photo.
That's a nice picture.
And then another picture with some pretty iris in the background. I'm not sure where. And this was in my parents' backyard. See, you can still see some of the garden area.
Seems to me that horse was refurbished by Mom and Dad.
Ah, okay, that horse in that one photograph was refurbished by Mom and Dad some years back.
Now, that last photo of the garden was after some of it had been reseeded with grass, but
Yeah.
that was all beans.
The garden had shrunk by that picture. Here we're eating at a restaurant. And this is Michael's grandson,
Devlin,
Devlin. He's now 9?
no, he's 16.
16. Oh, okay, I'm stuck in time. Okay, this is back in 2013, I think.
So this must be a Thanksgiving when I didn't come up.
Must be. And this is my parents' backyard. This is another shed sprouted up. Another tough shed. This is at a family reunion.
Yeah, I think that would have been in
Yeah,
2008.
Michael
2008.
told me that.
Yeah, I think that was 2008. Another of my mom's colorful flower creations.
So that was a sand pile for us kids playing, but when we were no longer kids, she repurposed it as yet another flower bed.
She liked hostas, so that had a lot of hostas in it. And she always had something for the birds to drink too, so she had a bird bath. And that clawfoot bathtub came from somewhere, and she repurposed it to be filled with begonias. And the arch there in the background, that's from the Dad's family farm.
That's the stuff that Dave was talking about that Mom didn't want to bring to Kansas City, but she turned it into a decoration.
Yeah. And these are not real Canada geese, but it's a statue in the garden. And another backyard picture.
In front of the shade tree where we were picking beans as kids.
Yeah, this
I
is
mean,
on
stemming beans.
stemming beans. Yeah, this is the front deck on the house, and that desk was paid for from Mom's settlement from breaking her ankle in the wintertime at the wallpaper store.
Ah,
And here's she's
think-
grinning over the whole almonds.
I think I gave her a bag of almonds and she was evidently thrilled.
Okay, this is the living room and part of the backyard. The tree had to be cut down a couple years ago. It was a good climbing tree. This is back in 2011 when Dad was in the hospital. And here we're at another restaurant scene.
We would always go there when
Becky
and
would
David
come up.
would come up.
And this is a picture of Michael's son Ted with Devlin, Ted's son.
This is after we were taking photographs outside in the summer, and Devlin was very hot, went straight for that air conditioner.
Something I would do. Here, this is 4th of July, a couple, 3 years ago.
A little bit longer than that. That
Okay,
one's,
I guess it is.
what, about
Yep, a little
5
bit
years?
longer than that. So Mom liked to decorate for the holidays. Flags, bunting.
Sitting out on their deck.
And here's a great picture of Mom's front deck floral plant collection. Crotons and airplane plants.
So during the summer, her plants would be outside on the deck, and when it was cold, they would be downstairs in our rec room.
Under a grow light.
Yep, and Dad set up plant lights.
Oh,
In
these
that
are
corner of the
solar.
room.
These are solar lights. Mom enjoyed those. And another restaurant get together.
With Becky.
And there's Becky, and here is Mom and Dad with Dad's remaining siblings back in 2008,
2013.
2013. Okay, the years fly. Okay, this is in the living room. Fairly recently, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It's hard to tell. Another backyard planting of begonias and a monstrous asparagus fern.
That plant stand was a sewing machine base. You could see the pedal, the foot pedal there to run it.
Okay, and this was probably Thanksgiving, maybe 8, 9 years ago. We got Michael and Mark and Stephen in there, and here's on the front deck some more.
That was during my visit.
Yeah, this was a few years ago. Nice day for sitting on the deck.
Well, Patricia
Mom
took
and
that
Dad,
photo.
Mom and Dad and Stephen. And here's Mom and Dad and Rex. It must have been cold. Everybody's got their coats on.
Well, this is when Dad was always cold. So Dad would have always been in a jacket then.
And this was at our house where we're currently living. And this is
2016.
this was from 2016. There's Devlin. You can see he's getting bigger. And there's Becky and Michael and Mom. And another family photo. Michael, Ted, and Devlin, and then Becky.
I guess Devlin dressed up in a tux for that. We didn't dress up.
Yeah, Devlin had a nice tux t-shirt. And there's Mark and Stephen and Michael and Becky and
I
me.
think that was in 2019.
2019. Okay, yeah.
So
That's
there were 4 generations in that last photo.
Yeah.
Is that right? 4?
yep, 4 generations in that last photo. And there's Mom with Sharon and
Liz.
Elsie.
Right.
And another Mom would get together with Sharon and Elsie on regular trips.
They would meet in Emporia, Kansas, I think.
Yeah, meeting up in Emporia, Kansas, kind of in between where
Yeah, this
Mom
one-
lived and where Sharon and Elsie lived. This is Thanksgiving.
I think this was
2019.
Dad's final.
Yeah, this was Dad's last Thanksgiving with us.
That's my last picture I could find of Mom. That's the beginning of the pandemic.
Uh,
So anyway,
So,
the
thank you.
pictures are rolling through again.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Christine, those are your grandparents?
Yes,
On which side?
those were my mother's parents. Yeah, and then this picture is Mom and her older sister, Mary. And this is way back in the 30s. And there's Mom and Mary with her parents. Mom's the baby, and that's Mom.
I guess her hair was blonde when she was younger.
Yeah, mine was blonde like that, and it got darker. This is Mom and Mary and
I think
whoever.
that's
Henry, okay. And there's Mom and probably Sharon? No, Elsie? And that's Mom on her first pony. And there's Mom again. Maybe 9, 10 years old.
So
There's
that would have been on the old farm where
Yeah.
the Marion
And
Reservoir is now.
then there's Mom's mother with the children, and there's Mom and Mary and Henry. Yeah.
I'm not sure who all these
Is
are.
that Mom and Sharon and
Yeah. And there's Mom with all of her siblings. Mom, Mary, Henry, Sharon, Elsie. This is Mom's favorite horse, Tony. He's the horse that Mom would ride to school. And this is another family photo with Mom,
That's a 1952
1952.
Plymouth Savoy.
Okay, and there's Mom in her late teens. And an aerial view of the farm that my mom grew up on. And it's now part of the Marion Reservoir. There's Mom with her mom, my grandmother. Another photo of Mom.
52 Plymouth.
My husband knows cars, I don't. And there's Mom with her parents and siblings. And that's the Brudertal Church where Mom and Dad were married.
Good.
And Mom in her wedding dress.
Oh,
Another wedding photo. These were slides that were discovered, and the film was in really good shape.
I'm receiving mine at Mom and Dad's wedding.
And there's Mom and Dad. Nice posed photograph. Lots of candles, flowers.
candle
So
in
their wedding was at the Brudertal Mennonite Church in central Kansas.
And here's some pictures at the wedding. These are Dad's, a couple of his brothers and their wives. And this is, on the left is Mom's parents, and then on the right is Dad and his parents. And there's Mom and Dad again. And cutting the cake time.
Something tells me that they didn't shove cake into each other's mouths. Like,
I have seen a picture of that,
they did do it?
yes.
Probably didn't
And
want
there's
it
a
on.
picture of Mom and Dad, and I believe that's Michael, but it might be me, I'm not sure. And there is Mom holding the little tiny baby.
Looks like Becky there.
Yeah, and there's Mom with Dad's family. Dad and his siblings and his parents in the front row, and the wives and spouses. And there's Mom and Michael as a small tot.
Looks like a little lawn.
And that was probably in Pennsylvania,
So
but I'm
Michael-
not positive about that. And there is, I know that's Elsie, and that might be great grandma on the far right.
Oh, wow.
And there's great grandma on the far right there. And Mom holding, I think, Michael. Okay, that picture is Mom and me and Michael and Dad. So, and that one picture where Mom was holding a small child in a blanket, that was me. There's Mom and me again.
Yeah, I recognize Christine.
Apparently I was pretty happy that day. Okay, this is Mom's parents, their children and grandchildren. And this is the grandparents with my mother's siblings and their spouses. Mom and Dad, Michael and me. I had apparently been falling down a lot, so I had patches on my knees. Here's Mom and, not sure who that is.
I think it might be Becky.
Might be Becky. Another picture of Mom's family, her side, with the growing families of all of her
It's
siblings.
a good picture of you.
And then another one of my mother's side and her siblings and great aunts. From her aunts, my great aunts. This is back in the 70s.
It's in our basement. Dad did all that paneling.
And then here's another family photo. This, I'm not sure where that was taken, but it's definitely us. This was in the 70s, Mom and Dad. the living room was turned into a dining room.
That wall was since taken out.
Yep.
It
This
opened
is
up the floor
mom
plan
and
by
dad
Mom
with
and
me
Dad.
at my graduation.
This is in Mom and Dad's backyard.
Yeah. It's big spirea bush. This is mom with Mark and Stephen doing reading and whatnot.
This looked a little staged.
Yes, it was. This is also 70s.
Flat top city.
We took this picture at Wisconsin Dells, and we all were dressed up in old-timey clothes. This was in the 70s, probably 74-ish. Mom and Dad were refinishing woodwork and a door in the house. They had lots of projects going on.
Is that the basement door or the garage people door?
Bedroom doors.
Sorry?
Those are bedroom doors.
Oh, bedroom door.
Yeah, here's a picture. Apparently, I'd left the house since I'm not in it. Here's Mark and dressed up for his graduation.
That chick on the left, I don't know whose that is.
And this is mom's side of the family with
And-
grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Yep.
That was it. Grandma and Grandpa's 50th.
This is Grandma and Grandpa's 50th wedding anniversary. Here is a picture with Mom and Dad and Michael when he graduated from college, and Michael's son, Ted.
Yeah, when Michael lived near Fort Worth.
Yeah, that was when Michael lived in Texas. And then this was back in the 80s probably, yeah. Becky
This-
and John with their first son, Aaron, Mom and Dad. Mom is quilting. Aunt Elsie took this picture.
I think Elsie color coordinated that outfit with the quilt.
Probably.
For
This
a
is at the
photo of Elsie.
this is at the airport when people were passing through, so we met up at the airport. And this was when Becky had 2 children. And there's Mom and Dad with their grown children here. This was a trip along one of Dad and Mom's trips that they took when they had the children out of the house. They could have some fancy-free travel time. This is Ted's graduation from high school, their grandson. And this is Michael holding one of
Yeah.
Becky's children. And this is
David.
Becky's youngest son, David, who is now graduated from college. This was back in the 90s. Mom and Dad and all of us kids with the grandchildren. Another group of picture with Becky's children. There's Mom and Dad and Rex. And Mom and Dad. Mom made that outfit. She color coordinated a scarf with a skirt, and this is taken in about 1990. And this was a family get-together on my dad's side with his siblings and their spouses. Now we're jumping back to North Carolina with Becky's 3 children.
So that looks like a chubby David.
Yes, he was a young one.
Yep.
This was probably about 98, I'm guessing. There's Aunt Marilyn and Mom preparing something.
Well, that was in
It's at a-
2001 for the reunion they had in Weston.
Okay, and this is a saddle Mom is taking a look at.
Was that in 2000? Couldn't tell the timestamp.
If it was 2000, might have been on a trip that she and Dad took. This is a North Carolina trip. Mom and Dad and Becky and John and their grandchildren. This is David with Becky and Mom and Dad. There's David again. He doesn't look too happy, does he?
Becky put on a wheelchair.
Yeah. And there's a cat who looks like he likes everybody.
That was during a visit to Becky as well. All
Yeah,
of these-
this is North Carolina.
Yep.
There was a botanical garden there that they visited. Lots of lush greenery. And this is a working garden, it looks like. And this is Parents' Day at our house. How many houses ago? 3 houses ago. Mom and Dad and Michael.
somebody managed, did somebody, oh, thought somebody managed to get Dad's things out of his
Out of his shirt
breast
pocket.
pocket. Maybe they just kind of fell over to the side. You can
That
see.
bell is from Dad's boyhood home. It was a dinner bell that you
Yep.
rang when it was time to get everybody in for dinner.
It's in southeast Nebraska in Beatrice.
Yeah. And when the farm site was sold, it
That looks
was,
like in this room. Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Yep.
Mom and Dad took that and put it in their garden. Okay, so now we're kind of repeating the same loop where we were earlier.
Yeah, we're back through it. We moved back through it.
Text everybody.
So we're going to continue replaying the slideshow for as many who would like to see it again. I will probably I'll probably be on chat to communicate with any of you who would like to do that. If you want to chat in Zoom, as you can maybe see at the bottom if you're in gallery view, there's a chat button that you can click on at the bottom of your Zoom window, and you can chat with everyone
You
there.
have to use your keyboard.
Yes, you won't be able to speak with your voice, but you can speak with your hands on the keyboard. And once again, we want to thank everyone for coming and joining us and honoring our mother today. Thank you.
Bye.